Welcome to another episode of Stuck in My Mind podcast. I'm your host, WIZE, and I'm very excited for my next guest. We're going to discuss something that's I love talking about, which is AI, and I'm excited to have him on the show. So let's bring him on. Welcome to the show, Alex Fink.
Hey, Will, it's good to be here.
Oh, the pleasure's mine. Pleasure's all mine. With all the misconceptions about AI, I'm really glad to have you on the show. Let's jump right into it. Can you share the journey that led you from founding Panopteo to launching Otherweb?
Yeah, so before launching Otherweb, for the previous 15 years, I was building perception systems, cameras, computer vision, that sort of thing. And at some point, it dawned on me that the world doesn't need more cameras, and that I need to build something more useful for humanity, if you may kind of phrase it that way. So I started looking at what is the biggest problem I see all around me. And it seems like the biggest problem is people are consuming junk. You just talk to people on the street and you try to figure out what they know about stuff that's going on in the world. And 80% of it is random clickbait. It seems like the signal to noise ratio in our ecosystem is just too low. So I started with trying to use AI just to evaluate content quality and to create kind of a nutrition label for articles that people are reading. And people like that, but the nutrition label that comes as an extension in your browser is kind of an extra click. And so the feedback we got was, this is great, but you should build your own platform. So we did. And now we have our own platform. There's a website, there's apps, there's more than 12 million users already in about 2 years. And we're growing, and it's going pretty well.
Awesome. So what really inspired you to focus on improving information consumption with Otherweb? Like you said, there's so much misinformation out there.
Yeah, so I guess I've been primed to care about this topic because I was born in the Soviet Union, and I just saw when I was a child what happens to a society when nobody knows what's going on, right? And everybody's consuming some sort of nonsense that the government made up. And I remember when I was 4 or 5 years old, my parents used to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, lock themselves in the closet, and listen on the radio to Voice of America, because that was at least some source of real information about what's going on in the world. And obviously, they had to do this in secret so nobody would know because it was illegal. So, because they were doing that, we actually found out that stuff is about to go down in our hometown. And we moved out of the Soviet Union and moved to Israel. And 3 months later, there were tanks in the street because Moldova tried to invade, Russia defended it. There was a whole bunch of war. It's a region called Transnistria for geography buffs. Right? It's still kind of a separatist regime that doesn't belong to anybody, and it's this little black hole in the middle of Europe. But the point is, our neighbors didn't know that something's about to go down. My parents did. So real information actually helps you act better in the world, make better decisions. And so when I look around me and I realize that most people don't have real information, or even if they do, it's mixed in with so much nonsense that they probably can't act on it because they don't know which of these things to act on. In fact, when I look at my parents now, like the people who were the most informed when I was growing up, they can't make sense of the news right now. They keep forwarding stuff to me that is obviously nonsensical. And so something is really broken in our ecosystem. And I just want to help people filter through things faster. So obviously, we can't make sure that 100% of what they consume is true because truth is hard to define, right? But we can at least make sure that it's slightly higher quality, that people only consume things that have external references, that aren't completely made up, that are posted on the website that is what it claims it is, not on some fake website that was created yesterday, right? That is written in a language that is meant to inform and not to persuade, right? I don't know about you or your listeners, but when I read an article and instead of talking about a bill, it says common sense bill or draconian bill, I just stop reading, right? It's clear at that point that I'm not being informed, I'm being persuaded. And I think people want to be informed.
Okay. So how does Otherweb's AI technology filter out low quality content and ensure high quality news?
Yeah, so the first thing we do is we scrape from a lot of different websites. So we don't just focus on a single source. We have more than 900. and they span the entire gamut from left to right. So you can think about everything from Breitbart to Mother Jones, roughly. Going more extreme than that probably doesn't make sense, but at least within this overtone window, we try to sample as much as possible. And then we run every article through about 20 different AI models. And each one of these tries to detect a specific bad trait. Like, is the headline clickbait or not? Is the language subjective or not? Is it trying to persuade versus inform or vice versa? Does it lack references? So we check for all of these things, and that's what the nutrition label is made of. Basically, all the bad stuff we could detect in the content that we could kind of agree on that it's bad. It's not left wing bad or right wing bad. It's just bad. It's downward bad, right? And so we try to do that. We filter out things that are just obviously nonsensical or fake or aren't from where they say they are from. But after that, we just try to give as much control as possible to the user. So it's the user that has a slider for every single topic and every single category and even every single emotion they want to receive from content. That's something we added at some point that people really liked, where we categorize every article by the emotion it is most likely to evoke in you. And so you can actually go and configure your feed to say, make it slightly more educational and slightly less infuriating, or vice versa. And it will reprioritize the sorting of the article just so that if you read your 50 items per day, slightly more of them will be educational and not infuriating.
Okay. So, what were some of the biggest challenges you face when developing Otherweb?
Well, the biggest challenge is not developing. The biggest challenge is getting eyeballs to it, making people actually know it exists, and convincing them that we are not some sort of a right wing plant or left wing plant or somebody else just trying to hijack their attention and convince them of something false as well. Right? People at this point have very low trust in media. And when you're a new media source, even if you are better and you're a public benefit corporation and all your AI models are open to the world so people can see exactly what's under the hood and make sure that there's no underhanded stuff in there, people still don't trust you. And so I think that is the biggest challenge. It's trust.
Okay. How do you see the role of AI evolving and combating misinformation in the future?
Well, I think AI is definitely going to be used to create content, and content creation is going to go basically to zero in price, which means we're going to get a lot more of it. And specifically, we're going to get a lot more bad content. Humans aren't capable of just coping with this influx of bad stuff. So we have to have AI on the other side, on the filtering side. Just like when spammers started automating the emails you get, people started developing spam filters. Right? When there are viruses, you need to create antiviruses. So if AI is used to generate things, and we're going to see it more and more, obviously, in the near future, we have to use AI on the filtering side as well. Now, it's worth mentioning that Otherweb is going into the content generation side as well. And we now have a product for bloggers called Autoblogger that generates blog posts for the people who automate it anyway, at least automate it better. So those are higher quality blog posts than what is out there right now. And we're also creating a product for journalists that will be released into beta next week called Ghostwriter, which basically automates all the stuff journalists hate doing but need to do anyway. Like write 5 different headlines to test, or 5 different meta descriptions for SEO purposes, or choose URL slugs, or fact check things against Wikipedia or other sources, things like that. So automating everything that doesn't make a journalist produce substantially better content, so they can focus more of their time on doing the things that only they can do.
Okay. What ethical considerations guide your work with artificial intelligence at Otherweb?
Well, you always have to bear in mind that AI is a very powerful tool. And every powerful tool can be used for good or for evil. The kitchen knife can be used to make a salad or to stab someone, right?
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that we are using it for good, that we are always prioritizing making the user's life better. And this is one of the reasons why we registered ourselves as a public benefit corporation, Because if we were a C Corp, like most companies in the US, a C Corp has a single fiduciary duty to maximize shareholder value. And at that point, even if your slogan says, don't do evil, if that comes into conflict with maximizing shareholder value, you do evil, right? And so we had to make ourselves a public benefit corporation and put our main mission as something that is binding on the company, on all executives, including myself, etc. So if I don't do something to maximize our mission, which is improve the quality of information people consume, our shareholders can sue me, right? That is a part of the controls we put on ourselves. Now, the other things in which we are trying to constrain our future selves, in a sense, is that we did open most of our models and data sets to the world. They are source available. This is done so that people can see that everything we're doing right now is not left-wing biased or right-wing biased. It's just trying to do the right thing. And if we change anything in the future, people will notice. So this basically makes it so that even our future selves, even if a few years from now somebody other than me is the CEO, we can't do anything bad without people noticing. I hope that this will become the standard for most AI companies going forward, that more and more things will be opened, not necessarily open source, but at least source available, and that most of these companies will try to bind themselves by their mission and not just try to maximize shareholder value.
Absolutely. Can you tell us more about Swarmer and its applications in military technology? Because prior to you doing with Otherworld, you created other programs. What is Swarmer?
Yeah, so it's not prior. Swarmer is currently operational in
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Ukraine. It's ongoing. So Swarmer is another application of a completely different type of AI that essentially creates an operating system for autonomous drones, the military kind and the not military kind, right? So any kind of drones that need to work together as a group autonomously without a single pilot controlling each drone. Now, there's still always a human in the loop. The human sets the objectives, but you can think of it as here's my list of locations that stuff needs to be delivered to, and you can decide what needs to be delivered, whether it's going to explode or not, right? And here's the list of drones that are able to carry stuff, and this one has this much electricity left, this one has this kind of capacity, and the system itself decides what goes where and what is done how, and it has a lot of other cool features. So obviously the first application, just because that's what our world necessitates, is in Ukraine right now, and it is used by, I think, over 20 different units of the Ukrainian armed forces at this point. I am not the main founder there. There's a founder who was previously the head of computer vision at Ring, the camera company that was acquired by Amazon. So he's running this, and I am just assisting with paperwork, essentially. So you could say I'm a glorified tour guide in that company, but I'm doing what I can to help.
Yeah. Okay. How do you balance your work between improving digital media and developing military technology as well?
I just do whatever is most urgent at any given point in time, and I keep doing it until the day's over and I need to sleep. I don't think there's a better way. I also have two small kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, time constraint is a thing. Though I found out, I'm not sure that this is true for everybody, but at least for me, energy constraint is a much stronger thing than time constraint. I found that as long as what I'm doing is interesting, that it really excites me, somehow I can always find time for it. And if what I'm about to do is something I don't really care about, like that was the case with making cameras, right? Then somehow, even if I have 4 free hours in the evening, nothing gets done. So the most important thing, at least from my perspective, is to pick things that are really important. And then somehow I always have enough time, and that's never a real constraint in my life. And if you think about what I'm doing right now, I'm trying to fix the world's information ecosystem.
Yes.
And I'm trying to help democracies win their fight against autocracies. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty epic. So I'm good.
Let's see. What are the key differences and similarities between the challenges in the information sector and the military technology?
I mean, the challenges are fairly similar in a way. You're trying to build something better. You're trying to improve upon the technology that currently exists. You're trying to identify what's wrong with what is out there right now. You have a problem, you find a solution. You have to figure out who it's for. You have to figure out who your users are. That process is the same regardless of what technological product you're making. And so there's not much difference from this regard. Obviously, there is a difference in, well, first of all, the amount of red tape. Selling to a manufacturer that sells into government or to government directly is very different from creating a free product and putting it on the App Store. Another key difference is in the degree of responsibility that you should have and how well you need to test something before you put it out in the world, right? We can release something within Otherweb that is purely an experiment and we're not even sure whether it's going to make things better or worse. And we can release it to a small percentage of our users just to A/B test. We cannot do this, obviously, with something that's about to fly into battle in 30 minutes, right? So there you have to have multiple test flights with in a specific testing field designated for that purpose. You have to run it by every single stakeholder, etc. So the process is different. I don't think there's a difference in the ethics. You're still trying to do what a good person would do. That's my general motto. That's kind of the normal ancient Greek virtue ethics, right? Do what a virtuous person would do. Don't try to do these perfect calculations of what will be the outcome of every action because you can't know, right? You just have to follow like, what would a decent, virtuous person do in this situation. And if you're designing an AI system, make it do the same.
So you mentioned where you were born and raised. How did your diverse upbringing influence your approach to technology and innovation?
So it's more diverse than that because I was born in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
I grew up in Israel. I lived in Japan for a bit after college. And then I moved to California and now I'm in Texas. So I think I have a fairly wholesome view of the world. Obviously, I have my biases and I have to be cognizant of them, but I probably have a more varied set of biases than the average person. And I probably am slightly better at being aware of my biases. And I'll give you an example. The fact that I grew up in Israel means that I've experienced one side of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, whereas I've only read about the other side. That's a big disparity, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to grow up in a society that believes a certain thing. It's another thing to read what the other side believes. So when it comes to writing about the Israel-Gaza conflict right now, I asked my entire team to never ask my opinion and to not let me touch it. Because I should not be trusted with it, even though I am cognizant of the bias. The best thing is to just keep me out of it. So obviously on the platform, it doesn't matter. It's all AI. But when it comes to our newsletter, we have an editor in London. He does it. And I told him, even if I'm ranting about some article being too slanted in a direction I don't like, ignore my rants. Because I should not be trusted on a conflict where I might have an obvious
bias. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, that's good. What role does education play in your career, and how did your studies at Technion and UMass Amherst prepare you for your ventures?
Mostly, I did my best to make sure that my education doesn't interfere with my work or with the stuff I know about the world. So I don't know. Throughout my time in the Technion, I was skipping lectures. I didn't show up to anything. And usually 3 days before the test, I would find out what this test is going to be about, and I would start studying. And I've even had some episodes where I showed up to the test. Some guy started arguing with me, saying I'm doing something wrong. I started arguing with him, asking, "Who the hell are you?" And then it turned out he was the professor. I just had no idea. So my approach towards education was I kind of need this piece of paper at the end, but I was working full time already and I was just going through the motions of what I have to do. And the same thing with UMass. The story behind my MBA, and I call it an accidental MBA, is that at some point I was looking through my course history on Coursera and I just noticed it looks like an MBA and I've already taken all the courses. I thought,
Yeah.
wait a second, if I'm taking all the courses of an MBA, shouldn't I get some piece of paper at the end? And so I looked around colleges that have good online programs that aren't different from their physical in-person program. I signed up at UMass and I took all these same courses again, but obviously I already knew all this stuff. And so all I needed to do was get an A on all my tests and things like that. And then I got my diploma in the mail and I didn't even show up at my graduation. So I've never been to Amherst.
How do you ensure that Otherweb remains unbiased and promotes factual information? You kind of said that with, especially with you when certain topics like with Israel don't involve you because of your bias. What are the other things you do?
Well, I think again within Otherweb itself, it's mostly AI doing all the work.
Okay.
So the way to keep the platform unbiased is to sample data from the entire spectrum, left and right,
Okay.
to open your models so that everybody sees they're not biased. And at some point, we actually announced a $1,000 bounty for anybody that can point to a bias in our data sets or our models. Nobody has claimed that bounty yet. So that was the main approach, is just building a system that is transparent and that doesn't introduce biases, at least none that we know of.
Yeah.
And then providing some sort of a mechanism for people to report it if they see a bias. Now, I can also say anecdotally that my email address is out there. And so when people delete the app because they don't like it for some reason, they tend to write me a scathing email telling me what's wrong with it. So my experience so far is that the people who complain that we are left wing and the people who complain that we are right wing are kind of balanced. They're two equal groups. So occasionally I would get an email saying, I got 3 Fox News articles in a row, you right wing bastards, right? And then occasionally I would get an article saying, I've been here for 2 days and all I've seen was NBC and MSNBC and I didn't see a single real news source like OAN or Newsmax. You bastards, right? So as long as those are in balance, I believe that we are trying to stay around the middle, but not narrowly so. We're trying to go wide around that middle.
Okay. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs or people looking to enter the field of AI and technology?
Well, it depends at what level you're looking to enter. So if you're currently not a very technical person, but you want to understand this and maybe start working in this field sometime soon, my first advice is tinker with it. Right? Because ultimately reading about it is not going to do much. And in fact, we're entering a world in which if it can be taught, it's probably not worth learning anymore, because if it can be taught to you, it can be taught to AI as well. And AI learns faster. So the only thing that humans can do that AI really can't right now is just to tinker with a bunch of stuff and to see how it connects. Because for now, AI lacks the tools to do so. So
Yeah.
tinker with ChatGPT and Anthropic and everything else. Tinker with Midjourney and DALI. See how things connect. See if you can connect this to this using Zapier and see what you can come up with. Maybe try to build your own pipeline of 3 or 4 tools that all trigger each other and build something. And eventually, once you get comfortable with doing things, you might notice that you can already start working as a prompt engineer and make a much higher salary than any non-technical person does today. I think the average salary for a prompt engineer in the US is 130 something thousand dollars already.
Wow.
Right? And you don't need a college degree for it. All you need is to tinker your way through using AI tools. So that's my advice to non-technical beginners. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, go for it. It's the one field that has funding. That's the whole advice.
How do you foresee the future of digital media evolving with the advancements in AI?
It's a pretty big transformation that we're about to see. You can think of it as somewhat similar to the transformation that agriculture went through in the 1920s, when in 1920, 30% of the US population worked in agriculture. By 1930, 3% of the US population worked in agriculture. So 90% of the workforce had to find something else to do because tractors did their work now. Right. And generally speaking, a lot of them migrated away from the places where they lived. You had a lot of big displacements in the US at the time. We're going to see something similar with all the professions where the output is words. And specifically, if you consider what a journalist does for a living, A journalist does two fairly separate things. They need to gather facts or come up with new information that nobody else knows. And then they need to describe those facts in an article or on video, audio, whatever that may be. That second part does not require a human anymore. We're getting into a world where if you already know the bullet points that this article needs to cover, AI can write the article. Maybe today AI writes better than 90% of humans. Within 1 year, it will write better than 99% of humans. And then it will write better than 99.9% of humans, etc.
Yeah.
So journalists have to refocus themselves on gathering more information that nobody else has and using AI to be 10 times more efficient. And that means eventually you'll have 10 times fewer journalists, probably. And the next step after this, as if this wasn't enough, is you have to consider what happens to the concept of a publication in a world where writing is essentially free, right? Do you need a publication that employs 20,000 people and produces 300 articles per day, every day? Or can every person have the article they want written for you on demand by an AI system when they want it? And then why do you need these 300 articles packaged into this daily issue, right? What happens to the concept of a search engine where there's no reason for you to get a list of results when an answer engine can just reply to you, right? What happens to everybody who creates content that and monetizes it right now by trying to improve their SEO, rank highly on Google, get people to click on that result, and then see the ads on their site? There are not going to be any results on Google within a few years. And so all of these industries are going to change quite a bit because we're entering a world where essentially we have a Star Trek replicator for content, right? And all you need is to gather the raw materials and for somebody to say what they want and to have it done by AI. So there's two types of companies that will exist. Everything else is kind of cut out of the chain.
Well, what are some of the most rewarding aspects of your work with Otherweb and Swarmer?
Well, I think personally, I am very result driven in the sense that I almost don't care what I have to do as part of the process as long as it's a cool thing in the end. So back when I was working on cameras, the favorite thing that in that entire job for me was going to an electronics store and seeing the camera on the shelf and asking the salesperson to describe it to me. And I know that 3 months ago, I was making that camera in a dungeon in Japan somewhere, right? So that was the most rewarding part. And likewise here, I like to see features working. I like to see features being used by people. I like to get feedback from people hearing that they love this way of consuming the news. I mean, you have to consider 42% of the US population, of US adults, stopped consuming the news. They're avoiding it consciously because the news is pretty depressing
Yes,
and infuriating, right?
Nothing positive. You don't see nothing
Yeah.
positive. All you see is nothing but negative.
Yeah. So when I get some of these people to tell me I stopped consuming the news years ago, but now I'm reading stuff again because of Otherweb, like that says that what we're doing is useful, and hopefully we can bring the same level of quality and output to the production side as well, and help journalists write better, more informative stuff, and play the clickbait or convincing game a little bit less.
Okay. How do you stay updated with the latest developments in AI and technology?
Well, obviously I read Otherweb, but as part of my job, I also read just about everything else. And one of the reasons I ended up in this particular profession is that I've always been an information junkie. Again, maybe because I thought news is really important since I was 4 years old, right? But I've always been a speed reader and I've always been reading a lot of stuff from everywhere. And I tend to have a pretty good memory as well, maybe from playing chess. So I kind of visually remember every article that I saw and where each thing appeared on the page. So I don't think I can avoid it, honestly.
Can you? Well, we kind of discussed that. What future projects or innovations are you excited about, both with Otherweb and beyond?
I think in the entire industry, there's going to be a lot of really interesting things happening. But I'm personally really excited about the idea of helping journalists produce higher quality content and eventually going to the point of working with publishers and changing the entire process in which content is created. Now, I should mention there's some risk in there as well. Just like I said, the kitchen knife can be used either to make a salad or to stab someone, right?
Yeah.
We are going to try to help them write more informative, more objectively correct, more down the middle material, and to do so faster and more efficiently and free up their time so they can gather more useful facts. At the same time, AI can automate a BuzzFeed like barrage of nonsense, right? With endless A/B tests and things that just addict you to things and don't inform you at all. So we're in a bit of an arms race. We need to get into all the publications and give them tools to produce good content, because if we don't, some other AI company that is helping people create clickbait might beat us to the punch.
Awesome. Alex, has been great, man, having you come on and talk about this. Now is part of the time. It's part of the show where you get to the solo screen and you get to plug away and let everybody know where they can find you and Otherweb and everything.
Well, you can find Otherweb on otherweb.com, and you can download the apps. They're called Otherweb on Android and on iOS. But even more so, I don't really care which tools you use. My one request to everybody listening is try to pay attention to what you put into your brain. Try to plan what you want to consume and how much. And if that diet includes news, try to make sure that you select that news wisely. And since being your own editor and trying to verify everything is too time consuming these days, try to find tools you can trust to help you filter through stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. This has been great, very informative. Yeah, even with me personally, I use ChatGPT, Cast Magic. I use different things that with my podcast, and it's actually helped me put in place a system on how I do my show now. So now I prepare a show. Before it would probably take me a couple of hours. Well, now it's cut down to 30 minutes in the process of preparing to do my show, and it's helped so much with automation and everything, and helping to get my podcast out there. And when I started 4 years ago, we didn't have any. It's just crazy. Just in the 4 years of me starting my podcast, how things have evolved and made. Like, I remember when I first started, it was work. Podcasting for me was like I learned how to edit audio, video, all this stuff, and now there's programs that does it for you.
Yeah.
And so
Some of the advances are pretty crazy. I've been playing around recently with a tool called Opus, where you give it a
Opus
long
Clip,
video.
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I got Opus.
That
I
is
have
mind-boggling, right?
I use that, and I have another one, Minvio, that I have. Yeah, it's just amazing on just how things are just advancing in the last couple of years with AI and everything else and all the other tools. But there are people who won't use. Like, I know a person that he will not use AI, and that's fine. That's on him. But then there's people like myself that who are willing to learn and for me, it's been very beneficial. It's helped me out a lot, and I don't have any complaints about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I see this all the time, and honestly, I still, again, because I play chess so much, I still remember 1996. There were a lot of people who thought computers cannot possibly play chess well, and then 1997 happened, and the computer beat Garry Kasparov, who was the world champion at the time, right? And then fast forward 20 years, we have computers that don't just play way better than a human. We have computers that play in a human way, and you can't tell the difference, right? That's what AlphaZero did in 2019. And so we're about to see the same thing. But every time I talk to a journalist, and it happens a lot, They say now there's no way. I've seen ChatGPT write; it's terrible. There's no way they can write as well as a writer. I'm saying, wait a year.
Okay. Yeah, wait a couple of months or a year, and you'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, because we are at the 1996 chess level of AI. Essentially, there's a year until it starts writing better than just about every human out there.
Yeah. Yeah. But Alex, thank you so much for being a guest. I greatly appreciate it. Let me close out the show. I'd love to have you back on, definitely. And eventually talk about more about what you're doing and everything. This has been a great episode. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. Have a good day.
Yeah, don't leave yet. Hold on. Let me just.
Yeah, I know I need to keep it open. I use StreamYard too.
All right, everybody. Another great shows in the can. I had a great time talking to Alex. Shout out to my Real Wise fam, Poppy J, Brandy J. Love you guys. Shout out to the boss lady. Love you and appreciate you. Big shout out to Alex for coming, Alex Fink for coming through and sharing his story and sharing everything that he's doing. And as always, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, share the episode, click on the bell for notifications for when new episodes appear. And as always, big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless y'all. Be safe. You know your boy Wise does it. Peace out.